The paper trembles in the cashier's hands like lit dynamite. His gaze, previously distracted by routine, now burns with something I can't immediately decipher. I know, in that second of dense silence, that this isn't just an ordinary purchase. It's a sentence. The note, which should have been just a receipt, bears 5 signs. 5 marks he sees that change everything. The atmosphere around me distorts. The noise of the shopping carts becomes a distant hum, as if the world were deliberately receding to leave only that scene in focus. People still talk, but their voices seem like muffled echoes. The focus is on one thing: the piece of paper that now weighs more than a rock. My daughter beside me tries to hide her discomfort. She looks away, forces a smile, but sweat runs down her forehead like a confession her body can't keep quiet. The cashier takes a deep breath. The way he holds the bill is like someone who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't want to see it. It's like you've opened a forbidden box and can't close it again. And I feel the ground slipping away from under my feet. 'Cause somehow I also know this isn't simple. This will swallow us whole. Isn't it curious how life hides its greatest revelations in the most banal things? A stray phrase, a forgotten photo, a receipt. Such small objects, yet they can shake entire walls of certainties. And there, before that receipt, I understand we're on the brink of an abyss. Not a physical abyss, but one that opens within the soul, where the fall never ends. I try to swallow, but my throat is too dry. I look around. People sense something is wrong, even if they don't understand what. There are curious glances. There are hushed whispers. The line isn't moving. The world seems to wait. And what's at stake isn't just the purchase of a few items. It's reputation. It's trust. It's my daughter's image, and consequently mine as well. His silence speaks louder than any accusation. Every second is a sentence unspoken, but already etched in the air. And then the question that tears at me arises. How can something so simple carry such a great secret? The cashier takes a breath, hesitates, and I sense he's about to speak. It's like watching a dam burst, knowing the flood will sweep everything away. The note is just paper, but now it feels like a cold blade, cutting through our masks in public. I think of a tree struck by lightning. It remains standing for a moment, but is already doomed to collapse. My fingers curl, my chest tightens, and I realize I have no control over what comes next. The truth is there before us, stamped in 5 unmistakable signs. The teller saw it. He saw it. And once he reveals it, there will be no turning back. It's the kind of revelation that can't be hidden, that can't be erased, that transforms a banal place into a stage for scandal. Because when his voice breaks the silence, the world around will never be the same. I feel the gazes weighing heavily on me, as if each person in that line wants to guess what's hidden in the crumpled paper between the cashier's fingers. And it's in that moment, with my heart racing, that I remember who I am and the path that brought me there. I'm not just a woman standing at a counter. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a 62-year-old black woman who has carried the weight of many silences on her shoulders. I grew up hearing that I needed to be more discreet, more careful, stronger to avoid giving in to malicious comments. I learned to smile when people wanted to hurt me, to lower my eyes when someone doubted my capabilities. Silence so often was my shield. But in that moment, standing in front of the cash register, I realized that silence can also become a prison. Because unasked questions and unspoken truths continue to exist, even hidden. And when they decide to surface, like now, they surge with the force of a crashing wave. I think of my daughter, of everything I've invested in her, of the times I've shut my mouth so she'd have the chance to open hers. And yet, there she is, her face restless, her body tense, her breath shallow. What exactly is written on that note that makes her cower in front of everyone? The air seems dense, as if the supermarket has been transformed into an arena where every detail is a test. The sound of footsteps, the strong smell of the bakery in the background, the shelves crammed with products no one else sees. Everything disappears, leaving just the three of us. Me, my daughter, and the cashier. It's in this narrow slice of reality that I realize how much life is made of moments that decide destinies. As I watch, a memory flashes through me. How many times have I heard people comment in hushed tones as if it were normal? Those women are always hiding something, or people like that are never trustworthy. These phrases stuck to my skin like invisible scars. Now, faced with the curious gaze of the line, I feel as if those old judgments are about to materialize, as if the score were proof of a stereotype many would love to confirm. Take a deep breath. I don't let the anger overflow, but it's there, throbbing beneath my skin. What sustains me is the knowledge that, throughout my life, I've learned to transform pain into resilience. I've learned that every humiliation can also become a weapon, if we know how to wait for the right moment. Perhaps that's why so many people choose to stay here, following each revelation, because they know this isn't just an isolated story, but echoes that can permeate anyone. My throat tightens, but I don't look away. I want to see how far this note can take us. I want to understand the line between the lie we're trying to maintain and the truth that insists on emerging. And just when I think the cashier might simply hand the paper back and move on, I realize he's still hesitant. He holds on tighter, looks back at my daughter, as if summoning the courage to say what he read. And it's at that point, the second the air seems to freeze, that I understand. The worst hasn't happened yet. The air doesn't return to circulation. The cashier's hand remains rigid, as if the note were a piece of ice stuck to his skin. I hear the distant sound of a cart hitting a corner, someone apologizing softly, and the faint clink of coins at the cash register next door. Everything continues to exist, but it seems in black and white. Only the three of us are in color. My daughter bites her lower lip, a gesture she's always had since she was little when she wanted to hide something and didn't know how. I recognize the fear behind her posture. It's not just embarrassment, it's the dread of being unmasked in front of strangers. And I, who have endured so much in silence, feel an old weariness rising like dark water, wanting to drag me under. The cashier blinks slowly, as if each eyelid were a gate opening. He searches for my eyes, flees, returns, seeks some solace in the routine, but there is none. The routine is interrupted by a line printed on thermal paper. Around me, I notice minimal movements. A woman adjusts the strap of her bag to see better. A man fiddles with his phone, but his thumb doesn't scroll. He just pretends to. A teenager chews gum too slowly. There's a contained curiosity, a silent hunger for scandal. And cutting through it all, a detail that cuts through me. The expression of the cashier next to me, sizing me up and down as if she's already decided the story. Her gaze says, "It's always like this," without needing to make a sound. I recognize this old, worn-out judgment that always finds a way to return. I think about what might be written. A name that shouldn't be. A time that betrays an absence. An expensive item paid for with a card that isn't hers. An address that exposes us. I imagine consequences like shadows stretching across the floor. Doors closing, relatives calling to ask what happened. Neighbors exchanging messages with screenshots, and that feeling that, even if everything is explained later, the first impression has already pierced the arrow. It's not just the truth that defines our destiny, it's the speed with which it runs ahead. And lies, even when they die, leave a trail. I breathe and look at my daughter. I see two versions of her coexisting in the same skin. The girl I defended from jokes about her hair, uniforms, and good looks, and the woman who learned to survive in a world that demands we smile so as not to disturb. She tries to breathe through her nose, tiny, as if her own body were ashamed to make noise. I almost touch her hand, but stop. There's a suspension bridge between us, and any sudden movement could rock too much. Love is like that sometimes. Keeping the right distance so as not to fall together. The cashier finally breathes in. He brings the paper closer to his eyes, checks one point, then another, and I see a small tremor at the corner of his mouth. It's the tremor of someone who knows that, depending on what they say, The course of a family changes. An impossible desire arises within me. To pull out the plug on time, freeze everything, ask for a moment of silence within myself so I can put the pieces together before someone throws them on the floor. But life doesn't ask if we're ready. It turns on the light and points us out as if we were a display window. Suddenly, I realize that the market's reflective floor reveals 3 silhouettes outlined by the light of the lamps. Mine, firm despite the internal tremor. My daughter's, curled up like a frightened bird, and the cashier's, stretched too thin, in the posture of someone pulled into a piece of paper they didn't write on. The image strikes me with painful clarity. Between the white light of the lamps and the shadows on the shelves, there's a territory where who we are is decided when someone doubts. Hope here isn't a big word. It's a thin but resilient thread. Fear, on the contrary, is a heavy blanket, trying to cover everything. He clears his throat. I smell warm bread coming from deep within, and it gives me a strange comfort, as if reminding me that no matter how much the world falls apart, there's something simple that endures. Simplicity is an anchor. Yet the anchor doesn't stop the wave from crashing. The cashier opens his mouth, and before any sound can be formed, a man behind him blurts out something thoughtlessly, too loudly. "Oh, here comes trouble." The word trouble drops like a stone into the center of the water, creates circles. The woman next to me presses her lips together to keep from smiling. I feel my face heat up, but I don't lower my eyes. Not today. I think about everything that wasn't said. I think about an app opened at the wrong time, a subscription that doesn't fit, a discount that only appears when someone has access they shouldn't. I think about how true stories are rarely clean. They have stains, scratches, patches, but that's precisely where we live. I feel a silent crack inside me. If necessary, I will be the wall against which the wave will crash. I will be, even trembling, even alone. The cashier finally finds his voice, but he doesn't use it all. He says my name carefully and asks for my ID, trying to back away from the abyss of procedures. I understand the gesture. He wants to hold on to the norm so he doesn't have to hold the bomb. I hand over my ID and observe my reflection in the laminate counter. Wrinkles, lines, eyes that have seen a lot and yet insist on finding a way. The contrast tears me apart. Part of me wants to believe everything will be resolved with the boy, calmly. The other knows there's something big growing behind the curtain. He checks the numbers, the date, the last name. My daughter steps on her own shoelace and almost trips. She holds onto the counter, pretending not to, and I recognize the rush of someone who wants to disappear. There's no way. We're exposed like clothes on a clothesline on a windy day. The document returns to my hand. The cashier folds the note in half, then unfolds it, as if rehearsing a speech on the paper. The silence is no longer simple. It has layers. There's a layer of shame, another of judgment coming from the corners, and a third that's simply fear of what still has no name. The light above us blinks once, almost silently, but it's as if the world blinks along with it, like a warning. I know, the way one knows without proof, that paper holds more than values and items, holds a trace, a time, a link, and that, when it's spoken, something will move beyond this line, passing through doors and screens. I hold his gaze, breathe again, and wait for the word he hasn't yet spoken, the word that, when it comes, will pull a thread that no one will be able to rewind. The cashier still holds the note, and his hesitation spreads like a strong perfume that permeates every corner. There's a pause that lasts longer than it should, long enough for everyone in line to realize something is unusual. It's in those elongated seconds that I begin to notice details that previously escaped me. My daughter's shallow breathing, the impatient tapping of the woman's heels behind us, the slight creak of the chair where the security guard watches, feigning distraction. The entire world seems suspended, and within this elastic silence, my mind opens to memories I didn't choose to revisit. I remember the first time I realized that small pieces of paper could carry truths greater than any speech. It was one gray morning, when I found a forgotten note in my husband's pants pocket. Quick, almost torn words, but they turned years of trust into silent ruin. Since then, whenever I see letters printed or scribbled on something small, I feel that chill on the back of my neck. Because I know that the detail, which many fail to notice, could be the beginning of an avalanche. And now, faced with the note the cashier insists on holding, the sensation is identical. Something lurks there, ready to fall upon us. I look at my daughter again. Her face seems torn between two desires, to confess and to flee. It's the kind of expression that betrays much more than any words. For a moment, I feel pity and aching tenderness, as if I want to wrap her in my arms and ward off all the curious eyes. But at the same time, there's a bitter anger growing, an anger that doesn't scream but burns inside. Because it's not just the weight of her mistake that's at stake, it's also my image, my history, my name. And I know well how names can be tarnished in seconds, especially when they belong to women like me. The cashier inhales, exhales, folds and unfolds the paper. His every gesture seems like a beat marking the rhythm of a collective suspense. I feel the tension rising, but I also notice something curious. The more people watch, the more some of them seem to silently root for the scandal to happen. It's cruel but real. Some find pleasure in the downfall of others. Perhaps that's why, at this point, many feel the urge to support this journey, leaving a silent signal that the message has touched them, as if to say, I understand, I've felt that too. I close my eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel the warmth of the market lights on my face. This pause, this second of reflection, reminds me that not everything is shadow. Within the darkness there is always a chink, a small ray, but enough to indicate that we are not yet lost. I cling to it, like someone holding onto a thread to avoid getting lost in a labyrinth. Because, even if what is written in that note is capable of hurting me, there is still the chance that I can transform it into something greater, something that strengthens me. When I open my eyes, I realize the cashier is also trying to protect himself. He looks around, adjusts his badge and swallows hard. It's not just our lives that weigh on that sheet of paper. It's also his, who has suddenly become the bearer of a secret he didn't ask for. And in that moment, for the first time, I feel compassion for him. After all, how many times have we found ourselves trapped in situations we didn't choose, but which force us to make decisions? Still, the scene doesn't fade. The paper remains there, at the center of everything, like a small flame illuminating a dark room. And the more the flame dances, the more we realize that the shadows around it are larger than we imagined. The feeling is clear. What has not yet been revealed is only the beginning. The paper remains in the cashier's hands, and the mere fact that he doesn't let go turns everything into a threat. The silence weighs so heavily it feels like a fourth person is among us, breathing deeply, watching, waiting for the moment to intervene. My daughter adjusts her bag on her shoulder, but the gesture is too quick, too nervous, and betrays what she's trying to hide. There's an electric current in the air, as if every movement could ignite invisible sparks. I realize it's not just the grade that exposes us, but the entire scene around us. The white lamps highlight every detail, the uncomfortable glow of her sweaty forehead, the worry lines that betray me, the attentive glances that multiply by the second. It's like being under a spotlight in the middle of a makeshift stage, where every breath becomes a spectacle. I think about how, sometimes, life chooses banal places to set up its tribunals. Markets, lines, hospital corridors. Places where no one expects anything beyond routine, but where, suddenly, a single detail opens the door to ruthless judgments. Between fear and hope, my mind dances in contrast. Part of me wants to believe that nothing written there could hurt us so much. Maybe it's a silly mistake, a technical detail, something that can be explained later. But the other part, the one that has lived through decades of sidelong glances and unspoken words, knows that all it takes is one misinterpreted detail to raise walls of prejudice and distrust. I know that, for many, the explanation doesn't matter. What matters is the first impression, the rumor, the version spread in whispers. And this realization hurts me deeper than any printed letter. I look at the reflection in the glass counter. I see two women. Me firm, trying not to waver, and my daughter brittle, her shoulders hunched, her mouth tight as if holding back screams. The scene is so vivid it seems like a contrasting painting. Light and shadow side by side, hope and fear vying for space in the same frame. And within me, a nagging feeling grows that I'm about to discover not only what's on the paper, but also the lengths my daughter has gone to maintain a facade that now cracks. The cashier clears his throat but doesn't speak. The sound echoes louder than it should. It's amazing how small actions in tense moments become invisible hammers pounding against our nerves. He breathes, adjusts the bill, and when his eyes meet mine, I feel him apologizing without saying anything. But why? For holding back too much? For knowing what he didn't want? Or for being about to blurt out words that will shatter like broken glass? Time stretches, and I realize that the market itself seems to be leaning toward us. The illuminated corridor behind seems narrower. The voices seem closer. Every detail of the scene is silent proof that we are about to cross a door of no return. And as much as I wish to escape, I know that running changes nothing. Because the note doesn't disappear, the words don't evaporate, and the truth, whatever it may be, isn't erased. And just when I think I've endured all I can handle, I feel my heart race even faster. The cashier takes another breath, looks at the bill, looks at me, and the tension reaches a point where even the air feels like it's about to rip. I know, without anyone needing to say it, that what's coming is bigger than anything we've suspected so far. The folded paper in the cashier's hands seems to have taken on a life of its own. He holds it so carefully it almost gives the impression of carrying a flame about to go out. My daughter, beside him, looks away as if afraid to look into a mirror that reveals more than she'd like. Time doesn't flow, it drags, and each second carries with it the weight of years of accumulated silence. The entire scene is like a painting of contrasts. On one side, the white light of the lamps that exposes everything. On the other, the elongated shadows that insist on hiding what we don't want to see. I feel a chill run down my spine. It's not just fear of what might be there, but of what will come next, when the words are finally spoken. Because this isn't just a note, a mistake printed on paper. It's about trust, a name, a story. It's about how a revelation, no matter how small, can ruin bonds or expose truths no one was ready to face. It's in this space between hope and ruin that my mind moves, imagining paths that fork before me. I remember mornings when hope was simple. The smell of coffee, the sound of the radio playing softly, my daughter leaving the house with her uniform still wrinkled but with a gleam of hope in her eyes. These fragments now blend with the image of her, tense, huddled, her hands hidden in the pocket of her bag. The sweet memory collides with the bitter scene, like two waves crashing into the same sea. And I realize that this is the dilemma. How to reconcile what we dream of with what reality insists on showing us. All around, the gazes multiply. A couple in the back pretends to select gum, but they don't take their eyes off us. A woman clutches her bread bag so tightly that she crumples the wrapper. Every stranger there seems to become an involuntary witness, silent jurors in a trial we didn't ask for, but which has already begun. And I wonder, does life always find an audience for our most intimate falls? The cashier runs his thumb along the edge of the note, as if to buy time. I observe the gesture and think about how everything in life balances on this thread of waiting. The fear that paralyzes and the hope that pushes us forward. It's like walking across a suspension bridge over a deep river. The wind sways, the ropes creak, and yet we must keep going. Because turning back is no longer an option. My daughter's breath grows shallower. She closes her eyes for a moment, as if begging for everything to disappear. But nothing disappears. On the contrary, every detail gains cruel clarity. The dripping sweat, the trembling in her fingers, the reflection of light on her forehead. Everything screams louder than words. And I feel that, even without hearing the revelation, we are already being judged by the anticipation of what it might be. Within me, two forces vie for space. The memory of the girl who dreamed asks me for tenderness, compassion, care. But the woman who has endured silent humiliations asks me for firmness, clarity, courage. It's like having two hearts beating at different rhythms, each pulling in a different direction. And I know that when the cashier finally speaks, one of those hearts will break. The moment stretches like a held breath. The entire market seems to be waiting, the aisles silent, the shelves like the walls of a makeshift theater. And yet nothing happens. The cashier stands still, the bill between his fingers, my daughter beside me like a shadow about to crumble. All that exists is tension, the certainty that the next second carries within it a weight impossible to ignore. The silence stretching before me is no longer just awkwardness. It begins to transform into something greater, an invisible chain that binds everyone around it, as if the air has become denser, harder to pass through. The cashier still doesn't speak, but the simple act of not releasing the bill already produces a devastating effect. Everyone interprets, everyone imagines, everyone creates versions even before a word is spoken. It's at this point that I realize that judgment doesn't begin when the truth emerges, but when the space for mystery opens. The void sometimes weighs more heavily than the revelation. My daughter is motionless, but her body betrays small cracks. The way she presses her fingers against the strap of her bag, as if she wants to rip the fabric just to keep from screaming. The wet gleam in her eyes, which she tries to hide by turning her head away. Every detail reveals a parallel story, made of fear and secrets. And I, watching, don't know whether to feel compassion or anger. Because with every second, it's as if I, too, am being dragged into what she hides. Her silence condemns me along with it. I think about how actions, no matter how small, produce chain reactions. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The impact is brief, but the ripples multiply, expanding to the shore, until there's no untouched water. This is what we're experiencing now. The gesture of the cashier holding the paper, my daughter's hesitation, the attentive looks of strangers. Everything spreads, invisibly, and gradually builds a story that may never be erased. I know that when the note is finally read aloud, it won't be just a glaring detail. It will be a ripple rippling through everything we've tried to hold together. It will be the collision of effort and reward, of effort and loss. As if every sacrifice I made for my daughter, every silence I kept, every renunciation, now has the chance to be rewarded or crushed by a few words printed in black on the fragile white of a piece of paper. The contrast is cruel. At the same time that I feel the pain of exposure, there's also a part of me that yearns for revelation. That wants, once and for all, this tension to break, for the truth to come to light, even if it hurts. Because the weight of not knowing is sometimes worse than the pain of facing it. And I know that many listening to me now can feel this same paradox, this urge to break free from the suffocating silence. Perhaps that's why so many choose to share their own reflections, to let out words that echo like commentary, as if to tell me, I understand, I've been there too. But the moment never arrives. The cashier remains breathless, caught between the duty to speak and the fear of causing harm. My daughter remains hunched over, her shoulders almost pressed against her ears, as if trying to hide within herself. And I stand there between the two forces, feeling the tension rise like water filling a closed room. With each passing second, the feeling becomes more evident that the true impact hasn't even begun yet. What has been shown so far is only the first crack. What comes next, I sense, will be the explosion. The silence that lingers now seems to have form. It weighs like a thick curtain between us, preventing the scene from progressing, but also trapping us within it. The cashier holds the note in his hand, his fingers pressing the paper as if the gesture itself could hold the truth for a few more seconds. My daughter keeps her eyes lowered, avoiding any eye contact, and this simple gesture becomes more revealing than 1,000 words. One doesn't lower one's head like that for no reason. One doesn't escape the gaze of someone who carries blood in their body by chance. The sounds around us are distorted. The beeping of other speakers seems to come from underwater. The voices of those talking in line are muffled, as if coming from another world. But within this narrow space we're in, everything is too clear. Every breath, every tremor, every slight movement registers with cruel clarity. It's like being in a room lit by a single candle. The light is dim, but every shadow takes on an exaggerated, monstrous shape. I think about the consequences that haven't yet arrived, but are already announced in the air. I know that when the truth breaks free, it won't stop here. It will spread like wind through cracks, entering homes, reaching ears, transforming into versions and comments. What today is just a secret trapped on paper may tomorrow be history repeated at family dinners, in curious neighborhoods, in whispers laden with malice. This is the cruel force of what is hidden. When it emerges, it never comes alone. Inside me, two images alternate. I see my little daughter, running barefoot through the yard, her laughter light, her hair loose in the wind. This memory brings warmth, hope, a desire to protect. But the image shatters when I look at her now. Her shoulders slumped, her face drawn, her mouth trembling. It's like looking at a photograph torn into two pieces that no longer fit together. The contrast shatters me inside, but also forces me to accept that perhaps what's in the note isn't just a detail, but a reflection of choices I didn't see or chose not to see. The cashier clears his throat again. The sound reverberates like a bell in an empty space. It's almost a warning that time is running out, that there's no way to hold back the tide forever. I observe his posture, the stiffness in his neck, the gaze that oscillates between me and the sheet. He seems torn, as if he understands that he holds in his hands not just a receipt, but a key that can open doors to truth or ruin. The entire market becomes a stage. The aisles are rows of invisible chairs, the shiny floor is a platform, and every person around is an audience. There is no escape when life decides to expose its characters before so many eyes. And what hurts me is not just the fear of what will be revealed, but the certainty that, once revealed, nothing will be discreet again. Intimacy, once torn, cannot be mended as before. Deep down, however, there's also a thread of hope, almost imperceptible but insistent. The hope that, when everything comes to light, I can find the strength within myself to transform this exposure into something greater. Perhaps a truth spoken in public can become liberation, even if it begins as a wound. But until that happens, we're stuck on a tightrope, teetering between falling and finding balance. The cashier raises the paper a little higher, takes a deep breath, and the gesture is enough for everyone around to lean in, attentive, waiting for the next move. I feel my heart pounding so loudly it seems to fill the entire space. It's as if each beat is a countdown. I still don't know what will be said, but I know that when the word comes, it will carry the weight of a hammer that can't be picked up once it falls. The paper held up in the cashier's hand seems to radiate an uncomfortable light, as if that piece of receipt were capable of illuminating secrets hidden in dark corners. The simple, everyday gesture now transforms into a scene laden with symbolism. My daughter averts her eyes, but the blush on her face betrays that there's no escape. And I feel, almost physically, that we're facing an invisible divide, before and after this note. The people around us lean in subtly but noticeably. One less step in line, a body leaning slightly forward, as if unwilling to miss the revelation. It's curious how collective silence can be so deafening. There are no whispers, no muffled laughter, just the pent-up breathing of dozens of strangers who, suddenly, become part of our story. The market, which until moments ago was just a banal, routine scene, is now an arena where every detail becomes a symbol of judgment. As I watch, I notice a contrast within myself. On one side, the shadow of distrust, the fear that everything will collapse in seconds. On the other, a strange clarity that arises amidst the chaos. The certainty that the truth, even when it hurts, also illuminates. It's like walking down a road at dusk. The sun hides behind the trees, casting long shadows, but there's still an orange glow that insists on painting the horizon. Light and shadow, coexisting in the same landscape, competing for space in the same instant. My mind wanders to old memories. I see my daughter as a young girl, handing me school report cards with average grades, and me smiling and telling her everything was fine, that effort was worth more than numbers. Today, looking at this paper, I wonder if it wasn't precisely the silences I cultivated to protect her that made room for bigger secrets. Past and present blend like two voices speaking simultaneously, creating an echo that's difficult to decipher. The cashier takes a deep breath. His chest rises and falls in an almost mechanical rhythm, as if seeking strength to break through the invisible barrier that prevents him from speaking. His eyes, previously fixed on the bill, now scan the line, perhaps searching for a sign of support, perhaps asking permission to break the silence. And this hesitation only increases the tension, like a taut rope about to snap. The atmosphere is so charged that even the simplest details take on immense proportions. The sound of a child banging a package on the floor sounds like thunder. The distant click of a soda machine echoes like a warning. Every ordinary noise becomes part of this symphony of anticipation, creating a soundtrack that reinforces the suspense. I feel my body torn between two forces. One pulls me toward fear, toward the desire to prevent revelation at all costs. The other pushes me forward, toward facing the truth once and for all, whatever it may be. This duality saps my strength, but it also makes me aware of the crossroads we're at. It's not just a choice between hiding or exposing. It's also about who we will become next, which side of the invisible line we choose to live on. The paper hasn't been read yet, but it's already changed everything around us. My daughter seems smaller, shrunken, as if she wants to fit inside her own bag. I feel bigger and smaller at the same time. Bigger because of my instinct to protect, smaller because of my helplessness in the face of the inevitable. The cashier, for his part, seems trapped by his own role, carrying a burden he didn't ask for, but which now belongs to him as much as it does to us. And just when I think the revelation will finally come, he just adjusts his body, takes another breath, and remains silent. Anticipation builds, my heart races, and the scene remains suspended in the air, as if time has been stretched to its limit. What has yet to be said already pierces us, but I know that when it is finally spoken, there will be no going back. The cashier finally releases the air trapped in his lungs, and in that instant, time seems to stop. It's not a scream, it's not a scandalous revelation. It's just the sound of an ordinary voice, bringing what was hidden to light. But this simple gesture transforms into something much greater, as if a door has been opened and light floods into a room that has remained closed for years. My daughter shudders. Do I? And I realize that nothing will be the same after this moment. The note now on display is not just paper. It's a mirror reflecting choices, failures, and silences. I see printed words as marks that cannot be erased. Around it, the air vibrates with a different, almost reverent energy, as if everyone knows they've witnessed something beyond the everyday. This is no longer a simple market. It's a stage of revelation, where every glance becomes a record, every gesture becomes a memory. An unexpected feeling arises within me. It's not just fear nor relief. It's something deeper, a clarity that slowly settles in, like sunlight filtering through cracks in a curtain. I realize that, throughout the wait, the true weight wasn't just in the secret itself, but in how we choose to face it. There are defeats that break us, but there are also truths that, even painful ones, set us free. And this liberation isn't just mine. It's also for those who follow, for those who see themselves in these words and recognize pieces of their own lives in the details of the story. The images won't let me forget. My little daughter running through the yard, her school bag sliding off her shoulder, her smile wide. The same girl who today tries to hide behind her handbag, cowering under the weight of what was discovered. This contrast pierces me like a blade. But it also reminds me that growth comes precisely from this collision, childhood and maturity, mistakes and learning, fear and courage. I look around and feel that each person there takes something with them. Some will bring gossip, others judgment, but there are also those who will bring reflection. What they witnessed was not just the fall of a facade, but the reminder that no one is immune to the revelations that life has in store. And it is at this point that I feel that many, in experiencing this moment with me, feel moved to leave their mark, a silent gesture of support, like someone who likes, comments, or chooses to stay and closely follow other truths that are yet to come. It's almost an invisible pact between those who speak and those who listen, between those who live and those who observe. My breathing returns to its natural rhythm, but my heart continues racing, because I know that transformation lies not only in what has been revealed, but in what it means from now on. I carry with me a new scar, but also renewed strength. The privilege lies not in escaping the weight of truths, but in walking through them standing tall, even when the audience expects me to fall. It is with this feeling that I conclude this scene, not as a defeat, but as a milestone. And if you've made it this far, witnessing every detail, know that you're part of this journey, because every story shared multiplies in those who hear it, creating echoes that transform. That's why I invite you to leave a record of your presence, comment on what you felt, support this space, and subscribe so you don't miss the next journeys. Every gesture is a link in this chain that keeps us together. The cashier lowers his gaze. The bill finally rests on the counter, and the world around me spins again. But inside me, something remains suspended, engraved. We are no longer the same. And perhaps this is precisely the greatest revelation, discovering that, even faced with the weight of the unexpected, we can still emerge different, stronger, and united by the experience of having been here, side by side, in this unrepeatable moment.